In this video, I'll demonstrate how I use an intuitive process to paint. When I start, I have no plan about the outcome of the painting. I have no idea where this painting's going to go. I'm just putting on paint and going to respond to what I see in front of me. So first of all, I just want to cover the white paper. And now I've mixed up a dark colour and I'm spreading that over the top using these stencils to create shapes. Now because the paint was quite thin, it was sort of pooling around the edges of the stencils, and this created quite an interesting sort of spatial effect, especially when I spread that pooling paint around the paper and created sort of thin sort of veiling effect with that paint, spreading it around. Where it had dried, I was getting these lovely little quite fine lines, you can see here, and then like a shadow where the rest of the paint has sort of pooled and spread. So lovely layering and building up of layers and sort of veiling this thin paint in layers, which created a really interesting effect. So I carried on. That was so much fun that I decided to do more of it. So here I'm spreading some more thin paint over the paper as well. Now when that's dry, now I'm coming in with some line, and the colours I've used so far have all been greens and quite dark, so now I'm coming in with a red, which is quite different. And I'm using, just sort of drawing freely here, but sort of following similar types of shapes using these stencils so that there's some sort of resemblance of shape, but also filling in spaces with sort of more free drawing, just to get some linear effects happening here on the paper. Okay, so now that the paint is all quite thin and built up in little layers, I want to do something different. So I'm going to put in some thick paint, and I've mixed up this light colour now because I want to get some good tonal value contrasts. So now I've got a light thick paint and I'm adding that, but I'm trying to replicate the same sort of shapes that I've got underneath in those thin layers. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm putting on the thick paint and sort of spreading it around and seeing what sort of effects I get with building up these layers. Coming in again with the line and the pencil so that I'm bringing what's underneath on top again, and then cutting in with some sort of thin dark paint. So I'm bringing in, creating shapes, and I'm trying to get that sort of thin, almost transparent layers and marks with that thin paint, and coming back in with line with the pencil. So all the time I'm sort of varying what I'm doing from line to shape, thin paint to thick paint, and just seeing what sort of effects I can get. This is a much sort of brighter green, so I'm just bringing that green through and distributing that around the composition a little bit. And now on this side I'm bringing in a brighter sort of blue. And I'm going to try and sort of link one side of the book to the other side. And in with some more line, using the stencil shapes as a little ruler really, just to get some straight edges. And this time it's a dark blue colour. So varying the colour. And now I'm coming in with a warm yellowy goldy colour. Now at this stage of the painting I am really still just searching. I've got no idea, and it's looking quite messy to me, and it doesn't have much order. There's bits that I like, but bits that uh, don't that I'm not liking, that don't seem to have much structure. So I'm just constantly adding more paint and searching and looking for something that is going to interest me. And I'm always trying new things out, trying to link shapes together and seeing what sort of effect, seeing what it's starting to look like to me, whether it's starting to look like something that's interesting. So I'm adding in sort of details and surface effects, little patterns, just always trying things out just to see if what looks good and what doesn't. And if it doesn't look good, I just paint over the top of it, put something else on. If it does look good, then that gives me an idea for carrying on. So I did like this really dark area at the top up there, and I'm sort of trying to contrast thin shapes, thin linear shapes, with much fatter, broader shapes as well. Making some areas look a little bit more intricate. And here I'm looking at what I've done before and seeing if I can get any ideas for this composition. Now at this point I really liked this dark area at the top, and I could see something starting to happen, and so I started to bring in some different shapes and started to link things together. I wanted to make this area at the top quite light so that I had a strong contrast at the top of the painting. So I'm just sort of adding details and looking at the shapes that are within the painting and how they are sort of connected together, and just sort of fine-tuning them, looking for differences, making sure that I have thin shapes next to fat shapes and where things are connected and how the eye is being led around the composition. Here I tried some different lines and I didn't like them, so I just paint right over the top of them. And when you do this, it builds a history into the surface of the work. You can just see faint remnants of things that have gone before, which make it really interesting. Finally, I decided to add some collage into it. I liked this little bit, but it was a sort of slippery paper that didn't stick very well, so I got away with chuck that away and then look for some different bits of collage to add in. So you can see the different layers building up there, and the marks that I made right at the beginning of the painting are still there towards the end. And it's a combination of line, shape, colour, and now adding these bits of collage in just to add another interesting effect. But they have to be integrated so that they don't stand out. They have to be something that you notice. It's different in its collage when you come in close. And these lines are different from what I have, and I'm just making this narrower so that it's a finer line, and just fine-tuning shapes, working out where I want the lights and darks to be. And finally I put in a word, just because I like words in my work, and that was the final painting. So you can see that it's built up from making marks right at the beginning and responding to them by looking for adding different things in. I first of all started with thin paint, then I added thicker paint, incorporated line, looked for shapes, fine-tuned those shapes, and then added collage at the very end. So it creates quite a rich and interesting arrangement of different marks and shapes and colours and things that I think they sort of feel like they're creating a different world on the paper, which interests me. And this is the final work. So I had no plan for this, but I'm happy with how it turned out.